Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Il est l'heure? Quelle heure est-il? Il est 19 heures. So the time now is 7 p.m. We have a brief pronunciation training workshop scheduled at 7 p.m. So I see that some of our dear guests are still entering from the waiting room. So very good to see you, everyone. Well, we are on Zoom, but I can see some of you, and I hope all of you can see me well. So let me do a little bit of introduction. So my name is Milton Poon. Moi, je m'appelle Milton Poon. I am a French teacher at HKU SPACE. Je suis professeur de français à HKU SPACE. En fait, je suis professeur depuis 11 ans à HKU SPACE. So I have been a teacher, French instructor in HKU SPACE for 11 years now. So it's good that we have an opportunity to have a pronunciation training workshop for everyone who is interested in French and probably has already been learning French, which is the reason why you are very motivated on a Friday evening to come to our workshop and try to improve, try to learn some tips for French pronunciation. So in my experience of teaching French as a foreign language, I know that French pronunciation is not the easiest thing to learn. But I do believe that if we, as students, learn the rules of French pronunciation, it is actually quite attainable, as in to pronounce every word correctly and in a smooth way, and maybe on the way to become very fluent in French. All right, so that's not the entire objective of today's workshop, but I hope that by attending this workshop, the next a little bit less than an hour, you will be on a good track towards speaking French much more confidently and in a way that you like your sound, your voice yourself, and also be understood by anyone who also speaks French. Okay, so what are we going to see today? Brief introduction, we have 5 sections. First of all, la syllabe, which means syllables, les voyelles, talking about vowels, la syllabation, so how can we find syllables in a word, because a word is not equivalent of a syllable, and la liaison, which is the link between words. Sometimes we have to make some links between words. And also l'accentuation, which refers to how you put emphasis, put stress on particular sounds in a sentence, not focusing on words only, but we also want to cover sentences. All right, so without further ado, the first is la syllabe, syllables. So for syllables, well, what are we referring to? In terms of pronunciations, syllables are very important because you can always, because syllables is basically what you hear. Usually when we learn a language, when we speak a language, we are trying to pronounce words or sentences correctly, starting with syllables. So I have several examples here, but then as a concept, a syllable always contains a vowel. I will explain what vowels are. And then it may contain one or more consonants, or maybe even none. So it is possible that in a syllable, there is one vowel without consonant, there's one vowel and one consonant, or one vowel with several consonants. So what am I really referring to? I'm showing you examples using the vowel oo, the vowel oo. Okay, so we start with an example where you pronounce oo without any consonant. So basically, just the letters or u is pronounced oo. All right, and then a word that is also that contains the vowel oo, but with one consonant. There are lots of examples of that, but I'm showing two here. So for example, we have the word tu. The word tu has one consonant t and one vowel u. But if you reverse the order of the vowel and the consonant, we have another word, which is ut. So these are words that contains one consonant, the consonant t. T. All right, and then I have examples for words with two consonants, still with the same vowel u. Huh? The vowel u with two consonants, for example, we have tu, tu. So which are the two consonants I'm referring to? I'm referring to the consonant t, the t sound, and the r sound. Yeah, so there's t, u. So altogether, we will say tu. And this combination gives us the sound or the syllable tu. But if we reverse the order of the vowel and the consonants again, we have another word which begins with the vowel u, but then ends with the consonant t. So it is the word outre, outre. If we reorder the consonants again, starting with and t at the end, we have route, route. Okay, so the examples with two consonants contain trou, outre, and route. So it sounds like there are so many sounds put together, but everything we have talked about so far are single syllable words. That means we are only talking about one syllable forming one word. Okay, so you can see that I intentionally chose these examples here. You may have longer words with several syllables, right? But to simplify things, we are talking about one syllable words. All right, so is there a word with more than two consonants? Of course, there is. You can see on the last line, the example with three consonants. So you have the consonant and also s. Altogether, it becomes the word trousse, trousse. So all these consonants and vowels together, we are still calling them one syllable, trousse. The other example, this time we changed a little bit with the consonant, which is denoted by the sound F, but is actually pronounced f, the f sound, and also the L sound, which is the tick of your tongue, l sound. So altogether, this word is pronounced souffle, souffle. Okay, so having covered this, what I want everybody to be aware of now is, well, we need to know what constitutes a syllable. A syllable always contains a vowel, and it can be accompanied with consonants. The consonant can go in front or behind after the vowel, or you could be made one of it before that, the other after it. Okay, so in any combination. There are some restrictions, but let's not go into those details. Restrictions meaning you cannot put randomly like 5 consonants in the beginning and then 2 consonants after a vowel. That is not what we do in French. So the examples I've shown here is the most common combinations that we have in French. Okay, so today we are actually going to focus on vowels. Vowels are very important in terms of pronunciation because those are the sounds that are pronounced, that people hear as melody, as sound. Of course, consonants, we also can hear it, like in the word tu, you also hear the T sound, which of course it matters to determine the meaning of the word. But just a disclaimer today, we are not going to talk about consonants because we don't have enough time. Just talking about vowels will occupy us. I think I will spend the next 20 minutes at least to cover all of the vowels as much as possible that exist in French. Okay, so we're only covering vowels. If you look at this list, you will understand why we need to spend 20 minutes or more on the vowels. Because in French, there are 16 vowels and 3 semi-vowels. 16 vowels and 3 semi-vowels. But you can also see from the slide, I'm saying that, well, it's more like 40 nowadays. Because in modern French or in the French spoken by most French speakers, 2 sounds, 2 vowels are being replaced slowly. You know, languages change, right? Bit by bit. So 2 sounds, 2 vowel sounds are sort of dying out, being replaced by 2 other existing sounds, which means we have fewer choices now of vowels. Probably something good for learners because that means there are fewer things to learn. All right, so 14 vowels and 3 semi-vowels. Just going to briefly pronounce to you these vowels listed here. We will have a chance. I will tell you when I would expect you to read along with me. Of course, behind the scene, I mean, you don't have to turn on your microphone yet. But for this list, I'm just going to read it out loud, right? So that you know what we are anticipating. So the vowels, the list of vowels here, we have the sound I, U, U, E, E, O, O, A, un, on, and on. So I even, if you counted, I pronounced 16 vowels, right? So I even included the red ones, right? Even though they are dying out. But I think if you listened carefully to that list of vowels I pronounced, the first question is there any difference between some of them? They sound totally similar. How am I going to tell the difference? Don't worry, this is exactly the point today. We are going to compare some vowels, some very easily, very confusing vowels, right? And then so that you can know what to pay attention to. The semi-vowels is actually not vowel exactly, but it is sort of a consonant and vowel mixture so that you can make sounds very smoothly, right? We will come to that, right? So the symbol that looks like a letter J, of course, is not pronounced like a J. It's pronounced like Y, Y, like what you have yellow in English, yellow, Y. And the next sound that looks like an inverted H is the sound U, U. All right. So, and then the W is, well, exactly like what you would pronounce in English, the W, W, W. If you did look at, pay attention to the shape of my mouth, the point of all these sounds was the shape that I made, it was constantly changing. I say yeah, yeah, w, w, we. So I sort of turn the shape of my mouth from a small hole into either a larger hole or spread it out. So for these semi-vowels, there's a movement of the lips. We will come to that. So looking at those phonetic symbols, the IPA symbols, if you're not familiar with that, never mind, right? We are coming here to learn French. We are not learning another system. But that was just a way to tell you that in French, there are 16 vowels. You may you may learn about other languages which has only 5 vowels. Yeah, those are pretty simple to pronounce, all right? But you can also say that the sound that we made in French is much richer, right? So with a lot different choices of vowels. What is more important as learner is to know which letter corresponds to which phonetic symbol or which sound. So in this table, we can see the typical spelling in French letters, right? Which correspond to a particular sound. Okay, so I'm talking about the typical one. We will talk about it later that a certain sound may be represented by several different combinations of letter. But here we are talking about the typical one. So the first one is the letter is not called A in French, it's called A, right? If you see the letter A by itself, it would be pronounced, very straightforward, the sound A. So this is the sound A. The example is the word pas, okay? If you see the letter E, here comes the complication. You have the sound E, and E. Well, there is a hint here. If you see the letter E by itself, you pronounce probably L, the E sound. If you see the accent, E accent aigu, you will pronounce the E sound. So this word is pronounced près, près. If you see the letter E accent circonflexe, the one that looks like a hat, you pronounce eh, eh, and the word is pronounced like fat, fat. Okay, so you hear the difference now. There is the sound le, très, and fat. I can single out the vowels for you. The vowels are e, a. Again, e, a. Well, I know usually students will comment the last two, they sound so similar. The first one is quite identifiable, right? So but A and A, what's the difference? If you focus on the shape of my lips again, so A is a little bit flatter. A, I'm referring to the second one here, accent aigu. A, and the third one, accent circonflexe, is pronounced A, A. My mouth is a little bit more open, and the sound is made a little bit at the back of my mouth, right? So it's A sound. Just give you one hint. Yes, there's a difference in pronunciation between A and A. But there is basically no difference in terms of meaning. That means if you mispronounce A and A, it won't cause any confusion in terms of meaning. However, if you mix up the pronunciation of and a, well, that is more confusing because there are sounds that is only differed by the vowels, like le and les, le, les. So like le garçon, les garçons, the boy singular and the boys plural. The only difference is not at the word garçon, but at the word le and les. Yeah, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so let's continue. The next vowel, the next letter, sorry, the next letter is letter E. And in the word, it is also pronounced E. So it's quite straightforward. The example here is the word see. See. The trick here is, what I should remind all of you is, in the sound E, keep the sound as flat as possible. E. Why do I need to remind you about that? Because we are all English speakers, right? So the letter I in English, sometimes it changes a little bit into, for example, the word six, the word sick. You have a sound in the letter E. But the letter E in French is a lot flatter. It's E, E. I'm exaggerating a bit, it's not that long, but it's the E sound instead of the sound. Not in sick. It's, if we have to pronounce the word sick in French, you will say seek. It's more like S-E-E-K, seek. See my point? So it's the sound E. So that's why here the word is see. Okay, we continue. Then the sound is O. The letter O. Well, the letter O again has two sounds. It has the sound O, like in the word trop, and the sound O in the word porte. Let me repeat. You have the sound O in trop and the sound O in porte. What is the difference between these two sounds? Again, O, O. The second one is more open and at the back of the mouth. Just like what we did with E and E. Similarly here, O and O. If we mix up the pronunciation between O and O, is there any confusion, misunderstanding? Probably not. The next sound, the next letter is the letter U. It's very important, huh? The letter U, because in English, we will say you, right? The sound we made here is also U. The example, tu. So out of the 16 vowels or 14 in the shortened list, we have covered 8 vowels here. Okay, so let me go through one more time these 8 vowels. And if possible, I hope you can read together with me, right? No need to turn on a microphone, but it's good to practice. So first one, you have the sound ah. Ah. Example, pa. Pa. Next, the sound e. E. Example, le. Le. Next is the sound e. E. Example, prêt. Prêt. Next one, the sound a. A. Example, fête. Fête. Next sound, I. I. Example, si. Si. Next sound, o. O. Example, trop. Trop. Next sound, o. O. Example, porte, porte. Next sound, U, U. Example, tu, tu. So practice many times. I mean, after this workshop, practice many times these single syllable words. When you're very familiar with these single syllable words, and you apply to other words, you get a very good foundation of how to pronounce the vowels. Practice a lot of times these vowels, then you will not mix up what you know in English, for example, because English has another set of vowels, with what you have heard here today in French. Next. On the next slide here, we have letters combination. So I'm referring to, for example, the combination EU, OU, AN, EN, ON, two letters together to form one vowel sound. Well, why did this happen? Because French has 16 vowel sounds, right? But how many letters does it have? It only has 26 letters like what we have in English. And then the letters that can represent vowels are so limited. You only have A, E, I, O, U. So R, E, O, U. Somehow we need to make some combinations in order to cover the other vowel sounds that exist in French. But the combination isn't always straightforward. So here we have the letter EU. When combined, you pronounced in the example, feu. Another possible sound of letters EU is the sound in the example, sœur. Combination OU, these two combined together, gives you, well, hope you are not pronouncing OU like in English. In French, we say ou. And the example is FOU, fou. I see a question. Is feu pronounced the same as fur in English? I think the vowel sound will be quite similar. It is the sound like what you have in English. But then depending on how you pronounce your English, right? So some people will pronounce the R, some people will not. What I need to tell you is, well, in French, of course, there's not an R. So the sound is feu, and I think it is very, very, very similar, if not identical, to the word fur in English. Yeah, that's a good question. And of course, it is always a good way to remind yourself of French pronunciation with something you already know, like the English word fur, like a Chinese word, let's say in Cantonese, right? There's not the word fur, but some other sounds it may be represented by Cantonese characters. But always check that it is actually compatible. The comparison is compatible. If the comparison is just approximately correct, I would suggest you to come back to this workshop again and learn the vowel sound, right? But in the interim, do whatever you have to, whatever you can do to remind yourself of the sounds. Okay, so where were we? We were at OU, so it's pronounced U. Now we have some combinations that involve the letter N. So the letter N is on. RN is pronounced on. So this is too strange because letter R and N is not pronounced an. is pronounced on. This is the combination. That is the rule. I mean, French could be complicated, but if you know this rule, it applies to every other word, right? So the example is song. And then the next combination, en, is actually pronounced an. An. Then the combination, the example is pain. Pain. And then on is pronounced on. On. And the example is non. Non. Okay. So there's a question. Can I repeat the difference between the feu and sir? You are correct. They sound very similar. Well, hope the sound quality is good enough. I'm going to repeat this. The first one is the sound and the second one is the sound uh. So let me pronounce them side by side. We have and and I'm exaggerated a bit, but as I explained, the difference is the second one, you have to put the sound a little bit more at the back and it's more open. And then the next question on the on and on. On and on. Well, the way I just explained, pronounced, there's a difference. RN is pronounced on. So again, it is more open, on, much brighter sound, on. But then on is much closer, it's a on sound. I know it's confusing because in English, on is pronounced on. It is actually more similar to on, the RN in French, than on in French. Okay. All right. Then we have the semi-vowels. Yes. Semi-vowels is usually represented by E, the letter E. And in the example, you see why it becomes a semi-vowel. Because right after E, there is another vowel after it. In the word lion, that's English. In French, we pronounce lion, lion, yon, lion. You see the yon, y sound over there? That is what we call a semi-vowel, lion. Actually, we never pronounce them separately as in a lion. Don't do that. It's not too, it is not the singles, the E here is not pronounced like a single E. It is a semi-vowel and you have to slide towards the on, lion. Then the letter U, well, usually it's pronounced like a U, but because there's another vowel here in the word eight, so we say huit, huit. Again, we have to make a slide. Huit. Then the next spelling is the letter OU. U. So usually we pronounce U, but nobody says in yes, you don't say oui. If you're exaggerating, maybe, but nobody says oui. We say we, because we're actually sliding w towards the E. We. Okay, so this is what I mean by semi-vowels. All right, I need to go very quickly here. There are some comparisons, hints I want to show you, such that you will not pronounce words in the wrong way. The first comparison of letters is the letter R itself and the letter combination RN together. So I'm going to, I hope you can listen and maybe try these words out together and you can feel the difference between just the single R sound and the combination RN. Okay, so we start with R first. We have ra, sha, pla, bras, drap. And the combination RN, we have song, bong, flong, plong, rong. Okay? Ah and ong. I hope you are really making notes of these different sounds, right? Then you will pay attention next time when you see these words, right? Second combination, second comparison. Second comparison is the letter E itself and the letter combination EN. So the letter E, just by itself, we start with li, ri, ski, cri, pri. And sorry, just accidentally moved to the next slide. For the letter EN combination, we have the sound vin, pain, peindre, plein, main. Okay, so you see this the word peindre here, so many letters is still one syllable, right? Next combination, the letter O by itself and the combination ON together, we have mo, do, to, rose, trop, the O sound, okay? And then ON combination is pronounced on, so we have bon, ton, non, long, blong. And it comes in, a comment came in quite at a good timing, just to share the English equivalent, let's say, of the letter combination ON. This student here, she put own. Yeah, OWN, own in English. Yeah, I think this is the closest sound you can make in English, right? Not exactly the same, but it's the closest one. Why is it not exactly the same? Because ON is actually a nasal vowel in French, and nasal vowels do not actually exist in English. Because OWN in English is basically the sound, the vowel O, and then the consonant own, own. But in French nasal vowel, it is not a combination of a vowel and a consonant N. It is vowel and consonant together. Sorry, I mean the vowel and the vibration in your nose all together at the same time. I don't have a picture here, but if you can look it up on the internet, nasal vowels, you can see that when you try to pronounce ON, the path between the nose and the throat, actually, when you are pronouncing normal vowels, the path is closed so that there is no sound passing through the nose. Like if you're pronouncing A, E, O, U, U, no problem. There's no nasal sound. But when you're pronouncing nasal vowel, air needs to pass through your nose, meaning that pathway is not blocked. But you also need to let air pass through your mouth. So it's both ways. Together as a combination, then you can pronounce a sound where there's vibration on your nose if you touch it, and there's also sound coming up. So it's on like that. So nasalized. Voila, is a very technical word, nasalized. Hongzhong, better fit for ong, hong, yeah, ong. I mean, we have very experienced learners here, right? So it's very good for you to share. Okay, the next very confusing pair. We talked about that. But here we have a better clue what is happening. Is the letter E, but in different forms. So for a letter E with accent aigu, it is always pronounced the A sound. A sound. So you have the word te, clé, fait. And then we have some combinations very strangely that we pronounced A sound. Okay, so let me repeat. I've explained this before, but the difference between the first and the second is A and A. A and A. So the examples here, you should pronounce sel, mère, and fait. Not, okay, so I'm going to demonstrate the wrong pronunciation, which is sel, mère, fait. This is the wrong demonstration. You will pronounce sel, mère, fait. Can you tell the difference? Sel, sel, sel. Sel is very flat. It's actually very difficult for you to do that. Why? The difference between A and A is, you see here, after each A sound, there is a consonant following it. Sel, there's a L. Mère, there's a R. Fait, there's a T. While you are pronouncing A sound, there's no consonant after it. T, clé, fait. So actually, the pronunciation rule is, if there is a consonant after the letter E, belonging to the same syllable, you will turn the A sound into an A sound to help you with linking up the consonant. So when do we pronounce the E sound? It is when you only have the letter E itself. So je, le, and ne. I'm referring to that syllable, yeah? It doesn't have to be only a two-letter word. It could be a very long word containing one syllable where it ends with a E. So it's also pronounced E sound. Je, le, and ne. Okay, so yeah, I think we probably should pronounce this one more time together. T, clé, fait, sel, mère, fait, je, le, ne. Okay, so the next comparison is the letter U, which is pronounced U in English, and the letter OU, which is pronounced O in English, but don't be confused with English. In French, the letter U is pronounced U. The combination OU is pronounced U. There is very, very often a mistake here. Like the word for juice, it looks like juice. It looks like bus for bus, but no, you don't say that. In French, we say jus, bus, sur, rue, cru, and the combination OU, fou, mou, loup, cou, tour, the U sound. And then we have other combinations, like the combination RE, EI, OE, and UE. They are all pronounced not an exact combination of the two. RE combined, you imagine you need to pronounce I. No. EI, you imagine you pronounce A. No, you don't do that. So let's try them together. RE is pronounced E. So you will say R, le, faire. One more time. R, le, faire. EI is also pronounced E, even though they're spelled differently. So you have says, beige, neige. OE combination is pronounced wa. So you have soir. And another example, moi. So here, the OE involves the semi-vowel, the W sound. So soir, moi. And then UI is pronounced UI. So huit, suivre. Okay, so let's do one more time together. R, les, faire, 16, beige, neige, soir, moi, 8, suivre. Okay, so I'm conscious of time. So although I do have prepared other combinations, other comparisons, but I think they are much less important. So I'm going to skip that, right? To this slide, where I want to remind you for the nasal vowels, the nasalized vowels, RN combination is actually the same as the EN combination. RN, EN, they are all the same. So here we have examples like grand, blanc, sang, vent, long, dent. So all of these ong sound. And you also have different spellings of en. It could be combined with ren or en, or even the combination un. They are all pronounced the same. It is pronounced un, so you have vin, lin, bain, train, plein, rein, un, et brun. Okay, so these are the an sounds. And then you also have several different spellings that is pronounced o. So of course the letter o, but also the spelling ru and eru, they are all pronounced the same. So here you have words pronounced mo, do, to, so, fot, po, and bo. So they are all pronounced O sound, no matter how different they look. Okay, so I have focused on the vowels because, as I said, vowels are basically what you can hear from other people's speech. That is the most important, the core part of a syllable or of your word or of your speech. But then how can you make use of this knowledge to pronounce new words? So we come to the topic of la syllabation. La syllabation. So, well, I have 3 words here. How many syllables are there in these words? La syllabation refers to the separation, the division of a word into separate syllables. So the first word, I'm going to read it. You tell me how many syllables there are. Well, you just tell me in your head, right? So the first word is français. Français. The second word is impossible. Impossible. The third word is américain. Américain. Okay? Don't think about it in English. It's not the same. The French way. Pronounce it the French way. Okay? So in French, I think the first row here is important. The number of syllables is the same as the number of vowels in that word. So you only need to look for vowels. And I also say here, the syllable may contain a vowel, may start with a vowel, may end with a vowel, or maybe not. So, what is the answer? For the word français, there are 2 syllables. 2 syllables. The first syllable is franc, franc. The second syllable, c'est, c'est. So why is this important? if you do not separate the word français into two syllables, you may pronounce it like phrase, phrase, because you are looking at the letters FRA, let's say it in English, FRA, and pronounce fra, and then ignore the N. But it's not correct. You need to combine AN in this syllable, because N doesn't belong to the second syllable, it belongs to the first. Why does it not? Because the next syllable begins with a consonant, the C, cédille with a tail. So N definitely belongs to the first syllable. Français. I think the word impossible should be the most difficult question we had. You might think that there are 4 syllables in this word, because in English for impossible. Mais en français, is in fact impossible. Impossible. Cible is considered 1 syllable. Because you don't pronounce the last E. Impossible. So 3 syllables. The last one, américain. Américain. So here, I think the trick is with the C-A-I-N, can. If you don't look at it as 1 syllable, if you're not aware that you have a combination R-E-N in French, which is pronounced un, you may pronounce something like américain. Then that's not right. Américain is the right pronunciation. Okay? So this is what is important about la syllabation. La liaison. Every student comes to a French lesson and think, what is la liaison? It's the link between words. Okay, so very quickly, when we pronounce a French word, I think a lot of you may already know, some letters are not pronounced when it is at the end of a word. I've listed the most common ones here. This is not all of the letters, but if you have the letter D, T, S, or X at the end of the word, you don't actually pronounce it. So the example here, I would say grand, I don't say grande, I say grand, fort, vous, and pris. I'm not pronouncing the last letter. This is usually the case. But when you have a word that begins with a vowel coming after these words, you compulsorily need to make a link to that word. But there are some limited situations. I'm not going to list them all, but some of the situations I have put the examples here is nous avons, vous êtes, ils utilisent. What is the particular situation here? If we are using the pronouns we, you, and they, nous, vous, ils, and then you have a verb conjugated, you make a link. Nous avons, vous êtes, ils utilisent. The other example is mes amis, vos enfants, les oranges. So what is the requirement here? If you have a possessive adjective meaning my, your, his, or an article, les, or what we call determinant anyway. So you can also link to you should also link to the next word, next noun, which begins with a vowel. So mes amis, vos enfants, les oranges. Or if there's a number like un an, 2 euros, 3 heures. If a number with a next noun that begins with a vowel, you also make the link. These are 3 common situations where you need to make a link. You shouldn't make a link every time you see a vowel and then try to link the S in front of it. It may not be necessary. But for that, you need to go look at the rules of liaison, and then you can know what situations are restricted, you cannot link at all, and what situations require you to link. So that is la liaison. Okay, so the last bit, l'accentuation, is the idea that the last syllable of a word is always stressed. What do we mean by stressed? It is longer and we speak with a higher or lower tone. So this is a very particular pattern in French. In English, the stress is elsewhere. It can be in any position of a word. But in French, it is always in the last word. So if you are just talking about the word français, so the C, the A sound is longer. Français. In the word impossible, the E is longer. Américain, the ang is longer. But be careful, we are talking about single words. But if we have a sentence, a phrase, then we actually need to consider everything together. Je suis français. We have 4 syllables here. A is the longest. Je suis français. Il est impossible. Il est impossible. Ils sont américains. Ils sont américains. Okay? So in French, this is the beauty of French, I would say. Why does it sound so nice? It's because of the l'accentuation, is the stress where you always put at the end. It makes everything very neatly, syllable by syllable for the rest of the sentence, for the rest of the phrase. Only the last one is longer. So I have an example here where you have a long sentence, but with a couple of stresses in different parts of the phrase. So I'm going to demonstrate with you. Ma cuisine préférée, c'est la cuisine française. Ma cuisine préférée, c'est la cuisine française. Mes amis français sont arrivés, pardon, mes amis français sont arrivés à l'aéroport dimanche après-midi. Mes amis français sont arrivés à l'aéroport dimanche après-midi. L'année prochaine, je vais voyager en France pour pratiquer le français. L'année prochaine, je vais voyager en France pour pratiquer le français. So this is how you would stress particular syllables, not the whole word, just a syllable, actually just a vowel. Make it longer than the rest. Then you have a very nice French rhythm. Okay, we are almost towards the end of this workshop. It's like 1 minute to 8. So, well, I have actually already originally prepared some testing words, but I would encourage you to apply what you have learned today to words that you see in your French textbook, your French news articles. Pick up words, practice with the words. Maybe choose a shorter one, a 1-syllable word. Choose a 2-syllable word, longer one. Choose a phrase, and then pronounce it all together, paying attention to the stress. Then you can, bit by bit, become more accustomed to the French rhythm. Of course, there are lots of other things to learn. We haven't talked about the consonants today. We haven't talked about the other rules of liaison. But then it is quite extensive. But today, I think this workshop is very important. You know the basics. I see a request to go back to the slide with comparison 10. Yeah, why not? Comparison 10, what is it exactly? For comparison 10, the sound is, the point I'm trying to make here is they are all with the an sound. Yeah? So the spelling en or ren or en or even un is pronounced the an sound. One thing that I didn't mention, you see in the examples of un, here there's a transition from a to un. That is the one I mentioned before. A sound is dying out, is being replaced by the an sound. So, yep. Yeah, I see we have a request to remember to do the survey. Please give us some comments on the workshop we have today. We do really hope to help our students and French learners improve their French in every way possible, right? So this pronunciation workshop is one idea of us to in addition to the normal course French courses that we have, a little bit of extra help. For a little bit extra help, you can also do some self-practice. We have some links here, right? Of course, the internet is a wonderful place nowadays, right? So you can look up help for pronunciation. But I've shortlisted 3 here. In these websites, you have exercises, listening audio. Audio is very important. Listen to audio and practice with it. If possible, choose one that have a recording function so that you can hear your own voice and then you compare with the sample pronunciation. Then you could improve your pronunciation much quicker. Of course, pronunciation is one thing that helps boost our confidence when trying to interact with others. So it is a two-way street. If you practice speaking more, you'll pronounce a lot more confidently, but you may be pronouncing in the wrong way. So maybe practice as well the pronunciation individually and then put them into sentences and then apply it to a real conversation. Then you're good to go. So yeah, that's all for me from today, right? Merci. And of course, au revoir. Au revoir in another situation. Our course, our autumn course is having enrollment, right? So most of our courses are starting in September. So do go to our website and take a look. And maybe we will see each other in class or just around the campus. We have campuses all around Hong Kong. So maybe if you're going to take one of the classes, I'll see you around and happy learning French. Bonne continuation. Bonne soirée. Je vous en prie.
Merci. Bonne soirée.
Au
Bonne
revoir.
soirée. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Yeah, keep going, but then I see a question. J'ai une question, pourquoi le cours est aussi court? Is it, wait. Is it a question about the pronunciation or is it complaining why the workshop is so short?
No, because the course is too great. I want to stay. I want to
Okay.
stay. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you
Merci beaucoup.
for your compliment.
Merci
Merci.
beaucoup.
Au revoir. Bonne soirée.
哦，你講生會快咗啦，刪咗啦，走咗啦。佢自動走，佢自動吸我聲啊！你都未走，我收唔到聲。